Good afternoon, Ian. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Pleasure to join you today on the territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people, and thanks very much for having us in Ottawa. I was here for Ed Broadbent's memorial yesterday, recognition of his contributions to the country we call home. It was a very moving ceremony, and it's a pleasure to be here. We're meeting today with federal cabinet ministers and with the Prime Minister to discuss the issues of importance to British Columbians. Those issues include housing, affordable housing, that people can find a decent place to live at a price they can afford, the infrastructure to make sure our province keeps moving, everything from highways to transit to water treatment, and issues about how to build a clean economy that supports British Columbians. We're taking real action in British Columbia to address these issues, and we need a strong federal partner on that. We've got 77,000 homes either delivered or in process right now, funded. We have legalized secondary suites across the province. We've increased the density, the number of units allowed on single-family lots. We've reined in Airbnb. We've addressed speculators leaving homes vacant through our speculation vacancy tax. And we're buying up land near bus exchanges and transit loops so that people who use transit can actually afford to buy homes near transit. This is just a start. We're about to launch BC Builds, a project where we work with local governments, First Nations, to expedite the approvals for housing, provide low-cost financing and other financial supports to deliver attainable housing for the middle class. As Premier, very keen to work with the federal government on these initiatives, with cities on these initiatives, and many more. Today is an important day in British Columbia. Two of our major programs have launches today in ways that are very real for British Columbians. British Columbians will have seen, obviously, the attacks on Taylor Swift, the fake images of her, and if Taylor Swift is not immune from this, certainly British Columbians are not. Our legislation that allows for everyday British Columbians to go to the Civil Resolution Tribunal and get takedown orders for images of them that are personal, whether they are fake or real, goes live today. This is very significant. It also assists them in identifying the person who posted them, so that individual can be sued. Also today, an important launch day for us, the first day of cervical cancer self-screening in British Columbia. You don't have to attend a doctor's office for a pap smear in British Columbia anymore. You can order a take-home kit that identifies HPV strains that are particularly dangerous, and it is an empowering process for British Columbians to be able to screen themselves and not be reliant on having to go into a doctor's office for an invasive procedure that might not be necessary. So that launches today as well. We're getting a lot of things done in British Columbia and look forward to your questions about how we can do more in partnership with the federal government.
A reminder for reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. Please unmute so we can hear you properly in the room. And reporters are limited to one question and one follow-up. We'll start in the room. Please use the mic provided and state your name and outlet.
Hi, Premier. My name is Jillian Piper, and I work with Global News. Your Minister of Post-Secondary Education, Selena Robinson, says no new institutions will be allowed to enroll international students for the next 2 years. What message do you think that sends, and was that at the request of the federal government that you make that move?
Minister Robinson has been working on the issue of international students, and in particular, our ability to guarantee those students a decent experience when they come to British Columbia since she assumed responsibility for this file just over a year ago. In particular, we are concerned about the quality of the institutions in British Columbia, that they are providing a decent education, predictability for international students, that when they come to British Columbia and they're budgeting for a certain tuition level, that they see it all the way through, and also making sure that there is adequate provision for international students to be successful here, specifically issues of housing and social support. Some students come from very small communities, they're coming to urban communities. Canada is different than many other countries, that they have the supports they need to be successful. There is, as has been discussed widely, federally, very serious issue around this. The federal government has responsibility around the numbers. For British Columbia, we have responsibility around the quality, and that's what Minister Robinson's announcement was about. I am glad to see the federal government moving on numbers, and we will address the issues of quality in our system.
And a follow-up on behalf of my local colleagues. The city of Abbotsford says it still hasn't received any of the flood mitigation funding it requested from the federal government after the catastrophic 2021 floods. Are you bringing up that issue in Ottawa today, given the flooding that the city is currently experiencing?
Yes, we are having conversations with the federal government about critical infrastructure. This includes things like issues like Highway 1. We're expanding Highway 1, but we're also doing repair work and have done following the atmospheric river event, as well as other critical infrastructure for Abbotsford and for other communities across British Columbia, making sure that our national trade corridor of Highway 1 works and stays in operation even in extreme weather events is a critically important shared priority of the federal government and the provincial government, and we do want to see the federal government show up at the table with the money to make real their commitments around this area.
Premier Ian Bailey from the Globe and Mail. I understand you've expressed concern in the past about the carbon tax carve-out for Atlantic Canada, and you're talking with the Prime Minister today. Do you think you can move him on this issue? Have you given up on getting some equity on this issue as this ship has sailed?
Well, British Columbia has had a price on carbon for a long time. This has been a broad agreement, broad area of agreement for an extended period in our province. It's not been politically controversial. And the reason is that the carbon tax is returned back to British Columbians, and it has assisted in driving down emissions in our province. The role of the federal government is an important one around supporting British Columbians in being able to reduce their carbon pollution individually by assisting them in doing things like replacing home heating oil with heat pumps. This is not something that is specific to Atlantic Canada. It is an issue in British Columbia as well. And I had a meeting with Minister Wilkinson, and I believe we are very close to being able to announce better cooperation between our governments to ensure that British Columbians, when they hear that home heating oil fuel truck pull up, their first thought is not about the multi-$1,000 bill that they might be seeing. And instead, it's relief because they've replaced that home heating fuel with a clean energy heat pump that is also an air conditioner. So we are, I think, trending in the right direction with the federal government on that issue. I know it continues to be a point of concern for British Columbians in other parts of Canada as well.
What would be the nature of that cooperation?
Well, there are two components to what we're looking for from the federal government. One is we want to make it as simple as possible for British Columbians to transition to clean energy heating, clean energy transportation. If you have to fill out multiple application forms for different levels of government, different programs that have different requirements, it just makes it that much more difficult. So the ideal scenario is where it's invisible to you as a consumer. You're able to go buy your heat pump to replace your home heating oil heating, and it's priced more affordably than any other option, and you're able to do it quickly and conveniently. That's the goal that we're working towards in that part. The other part is financial. The government of British Columbia is putting up resources to support British Columbians to make this transition, to reduce their costs, because we know cost of living has been a serious issue for British Columbians as well as people across North America right now. And this is one way to bring down costs for people, by supporting them financially in bringing down the cost of this essential appliance for their home.
We'll go to the phone next with a question from Rob Buffum, CTV Vancouver.
Oh, hi, Premier. You mentioned over the weekend in an interview that the federal government had told you and your team what the cap would be on international students, visas coming to BC, and also the importance to you of having exemptions for certain areas of study like healthcare. Hoping you can give us a sense of what that cap might be and how optimistic you are that there will indeed be exemptions carved out for certain students like healthcare students.
Thanks, Rob. I know that there are a lot of people watching very anxiously the numbers that are being released by the federal government. There are people, obviously, who operate these schools, both public and private. Our universities, our colleges, and smaller schools across the province, as well as international students themselves who may be prospective students coming to British Columbia. Our staff will provide you, Rob, with what we've received from the federal government to this point in terms of the numbers. And it's important to keep in mind with those numbers that this is the first stage of, frankly, a discussion that we're having with the federal government about the number itself, as well as any other areas that might be carved out for areas of particular need. Training LPNs, the nurses who work in long-term care facilities, for example, and support our healthcare system. Training for daycare workers, childcare workers, who allow us to open more childcare facilities in the province if they're properly trained to our high standards. Truck drivers, other skilled trades. These are areas where we know we have significant labor shortages, where these schools can be very supportive in supporting British Columbians. And so we'll be having conversations with the federal government about what the numbers mean and what the exemption areas may be.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
I do. It's on behalf of a colleague who I was doing a story about the possibility of further strike action this week, and thousands of people who've signed a petition asking the province to declare buses an essential service. I want to get your reaction to their request to have them declared an essential service, and is that something that you would consider?
Well, there's just no question for British Columbians the importance of a functioning transit system. It doesn't mean if you're physically on the bus or not. The impacts of the transit system being shut down when you're trying to get to work are huge for British Columbians. The message to both sides in this dispute, to TransLink and to the supervisors, is work it out at the table. They are currently engaged in a process with a very well-known mediator, Mr. Reddy. I am expecting that both of them will take all efforts to come to first of all, recognize the responsibility for a service that is absolutely critical for so many British Columbians, and the massive responsibility that places on them to be careful and appropriate at the table. And secondly, in recognizing that, to come to a deal so that we can move forward.
Our next question is from Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Hi, Premier. I just wanted to ask you about the incident over the weekend with the incorrect information posted on your social media about the, Holocaust, International Holocaust Memorial Day. Are you able to explain how this happened and why there isn't sort of a double checking system before these tweets go out, since, even though inadvertently it seemed to cause a lot of upset, and where is the accountability going to lie?
Thanks, Katie. Mistakes happen, but in this case, this was a mistake on a particularly sensitive subject, the day of remembrance around the Holocaust. And it is not acceptable that it happened. I would like to apologize to anyone who was hurt by this error that was made, and to reassure people that we have taken steps to confirm the content of any of my public statements that are issued by social media before they are released. As far as the personnel matter, we don't discuss personnel matters in the media, but we will ensure that this mistake does not happen again.
Katie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and on these sextortion legislation and intimate images, you mentioned that the deepfake AI generated image of Taylor Swift. So will this legislation cover those such images? And I've also heard some security experts say that the federal government, Ottawa, needs to update criminal code legislation to cover deep fakes for adults. Right now, for youth, it would be covered under child non-consensual images. But is there a need for action from the federal government on this?
I think that the troubling developments over the weekend in relation to one of the most popular pop stars that has ever lived, and recognizing that even someone with the wealth and authority and power that she has, that this could happen, is a call for all governments and tech companies to have a look at the laws and the frameworks and the safeguards that they have in place for just regular people. If this can happen to Taylor Swift, this can happen to any Canadian. any British Columbian. Our work on this started a while ago, but this incident really raises the profile of it for many people. It doesn't matter if the image is real or if it's fake. Our new law and the system that we put in place with the expedited takedown orders that are distributed directly to the key tech companies like Google and Facebook and others to get those images taken down will address those issues.
Our next question is from Marcella Bernardo, CBC.
Hi, Premier. I was hoping to ask you if you've had any discussions today with anyone in Ottawa about mandatory treatment for repeat offenders. It's quite an issue here in Kamloops, and business owners are quite upset that there seems to be a revolving door with people that could be eligible for treatment not getting it and not being forced to take that option when it's clear that they're a harm to themselves and to others.
We put in place a system across the province for repeat offenders, individuals committing property crime, typically repeatedly over and over again, to make sure that the prosecution team, the police, the probation officials are all working together to identify when people are released, what conditions are being asked for, whether someone is compliant with the court's orders when they order that somebody participate in some kind of treatment program. The program is showing very positive results in a number of communities. We're very excited about the direction that it's going. But again, this program started about just over a year ago, and we know that there's more work to do. We opened 180 treatment beds across the province to make sure that there's even more space available across the province, different categories of need, to ensure that people are able to have access to that treatment, including high quality treatment that used to be private beds for thousands of dollars, that it's widely available to the public. It's part of that work, but the key of it is making sure there are these dedicated teams working together for those offenders that have that disproportionate impact, whether it's in Kamloops or Kelowna or anywhere else in the province.
Marcella, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Just regarding the push, because there seems to be this push for mandatory treatment in the sense that once someone agrees to go into a program, they're not allowed to leave. And the health officials or health workers that I've talked to about this are saying it's similar to somebody who has Alzheimer's not being trusted to take care of themselves anymore. So they're put in a care facility so that someone else can monitor them if they are a threat to themselves or to others. Is that something that you can hopefully get support from Ottawa to make a reality?
Well, there are two examples, Marcella, of mandatory treatment in British Columbia right now. One is where two doctors agree, or now a doctor and a nurse practitioner, or two nurse practitioners agree that somebody is a danger to themselves, to other people. They need to be held in hospital for treatment for mental health. That is something that is happening in British Columbia, and we're continuing, especially in our hospital updates, upgrades and new builds, to create additional spaces for psychiatric support, which is under increasing demand in British Columbia, that there's the physical beds available for people when that happens. The second is the judge that hears a particular offense is able to make an order that a person attend at a treatment facility, participate in a treatment program, and if that person does not participate in that, they will go to jail. So that is a mandatory form of treatment, and that is the area that is really supported by these integrated teams that identify what is it that this person needs to be able to break that cycle of offending. And that is the information that is then fed to the prosecutor, who asks for it to the judge. And the prosecutor doesn't have just one file among 200 on their desk that they're trying to figure out which one is the one that's the chronic offender. This is a dedicated prosecution team, a dedicated policing team, a dedicated probation team that is following this individual to make sure the judge has all the information they need to order that mandatory treatment. There is opportunity with the federal government, I believe, around additional support around addiction, mental health, and crime. But one of the things that I'm here really asking the federal government about related to crime is at a much higher level. The importation of precursor chemicals for fentanyl, crystal meth, and other drugs to Canada, the ability of organized crime groups to operate in Canada, and the need for what's called RICO legislation in the United States, but that recognizes that people are working together as an integrated criminal organization. This is an opportunity where I think the federal government can help us in terms of the people who are really profiting from the misery that we're seeing in the form of these repeat offenders that are doing the shoplifting at the ground level.
Our next question is from Rob Shaw, Czech News.
Hey, Premier. What is left on your housing ask list from Ottawa? Like, what do you want from them? Did you make any progress on that today? And why is it so slow for them to open up federal land for housing? I know you've asked for that before.
Thanks, Rob. The top of my asks with the federal government is support for our BC Builds program. We believe very strongly, and we're pushing ahead, that government needs to be involved in building affordable, attainable housing for the middle class, which is what that program's about. So that's my key pitch to the housing minister, to the prime minister, and I feel very positive about where we're going on that particular program with the feds. There are specific housing initiatives in BC, specific projects that are unique in one respect or another, that require individual attention from the prime minister and from the housing minister in order for them to be successful and to get across the line. So I'm speaking with them about some individual projects as well. And then finally, the federal government has a really important and significant role to play around Indigenous housing in our country, and particularly in British Columbia. And I'm bringing back the message that British Columbia has been willing to build housing on reserve, which is a federal responsibility. But we really need the federal government at a minimum to match the amount of money that we're putting in to Indigenous housing, which is their responsibility. What we're seeing in hub cities like Terrace and Trail and Williams Lake, Prince George, is that people from outlying Indigenous communities, because there's not housing available, are coming to live on the street in those communities. And we really do need the federal government to take the issue of Indigenous housing very, very seriously. Finally, I continue to push the federal government to identify land that they own that may be suitable for housing, especially where that land is connected to an area where the federal government's a major employer, like military bases. They have committed to have a look at those kinds of things, but we have yet to see action on that.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Just on another topic here, a lot of discussion about the government's public consultation on sharing decision-making with Indigenous groups on public land, and this idea that this is happening very fast, it's flying under the radar, it could impact people with tenures and renewals, and that it might be First Nations governance for the first time over non-First Nations people with the decision-making that government set out here. So I'm just wondering if you could explain what the purpose of this is and why is it happening so quickly, so quietly?
Well, broadly, I can understand the anxiety that people would have if they have some kind of an operation, whether economic or personal, on Crown land. Crown land is the vast majority of our province. And so it's appropriate for people to ask, okay, how is government managing that land? How will decisions be made? In 2019, we passed the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. 2 sections of the Act talked about entering into agreements with First Nations around consent-based agreements around particular projects in the province. Since then, we've been engaging in the work with First Nations around major projects, private projects, public projects, the Northwest Transmission Line, the mining that's taking place in the Tahltan. And these are projects where it's very obvious to us because of court decisions. Section 35 of the Constitution, we have a legal obligation when we're in core territories of First Nations to involve nations directly. We also feel that there's a moral obligation for us to do this as well. But if nothing else, the courts have told us the government has to do this. So this Land Act amendment essentially brings into force the ability legally for government to do what we've been doing, frankly, up to this point, which is having those discussions with nations, entering into agreements with them about major projects on the land, which we're legally required to do. So the only example that we have to date of this work is our partnership with the Tahltan First Nation in relation to consent-based agreements on mining on their territory. There was a large media event where we announced this and celebrated it when we passed DRIPA. We invited dignitaries from across the province to come and join us, leaders from First Nations. It was voted on in favor by all parties. This is an amendment that brings the Land Act into compliance with Sections 6 and 7 of the DRIPA legislation. In terms of engaging the public, there was a posting put on the website saying, we're doing this work on the Land Act. Is there anything special about the Land Act that we need to know in terms of when we do enter into an agreement with a nation like this on a specific project that we should be considering in relation to these amendments? Because we're seeking public feedback on this specific piece.
Our next question is from Wolf Deppner, Black Press.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking my question. A question regarding post-secondary international students. Premier, what is your message to future international students and or current international students about the current state of confusion about this issue? So I know you have received the numbers, your government has received the numbers about the cap, but the numbers is not yet public. The number could change. But there is, I suspect, quite a bit of anxiety about this issue. What's your message to international students, to future international students here?
Thanks, Wolf. We'll make sure to get those numbers to you. I would give you the number, but I understand there's some different categories, and best that you see directly what we've been given. In terms of the overall message for international students, I think, and for British Columbians, the message is a net positive one. International students have been a key part of ensuring that post-secondary students in British Columbia are exposed to people from around the world, ideas from around the world, people who are brilliant from around the world. And some of those folks stay in British Columbia and help build our province. It's been a cornerstone of how our province has developed for many years. And it's also right to say that those students need to be treated fairly when they're here. The volume, the sheer number of international students that we've seen over the last couple of years in British Columbia, combined with, frankly, unscrupulous actions on the part of some immigration brokers and some private post-secondary institutions in our province, has led to Minister Robinson's announcement today that we will be tightening controls on a number of fronts to ensure that international students have a positive experience. Is everything from tuition predictability, so that you can budget for your time in school, but also, will you have a decent place to live when you come to British Columbia to study? And also, will the education that you receive be of the kind of quality that we expect that you would be provided in our province, so that whether you stay in British Columbia or you go home, you have positive feelings about your time in our province.
Wolf, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and this concerns about what you said earlier about your discussions with the federal government regarding a BC version of the subsidies that Atlantic Canada received regarding heat pumps. What, if any, timeline can you attach to this? You said that discussions have been positive, but can you sort of talk about timelines and financial support from the federal government on this issue? Thank you.
Thanks, Wolf. I think on the co-administration, so that it's very easy for British Columbians to be able to take advantage of these federal and provincial programs together without multiple applications, I think we're very close on that. I had a meeting with Minister Wilkinson today, and it was a very positive meeting. I think that work is advancing well, and expect to have more to say about that in the weeks ahead. I understand the federal government is also in their budgeting process right now and making decisions about different programs, including programs to support Canadians in switching to more affordable, more efficient types of heating and cooling for their homes. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be here, was to make sure that BC is on the map and our concerns are on the map in terms of fair treatment with Atlantic Canada when it comes to the upcoming budget.
Our next question is from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Thanks, Premier. I'm also asking about the international students. Do you think the reduction in students visas should be, how do you think they should be balanced between the public and private institutions in BC?
Well, I think that a lot of the work is going to be in the details with the federal government, particularly in relation to what I've been describing as exemption categories. So I think that when it comes down to the core message we have for the federal government, it's not necessarily about a public-private distinction. It's about the skills that are being taught and the quality of the institution that is offering that training. We're doing our part in terms of the quality of the institution. Here are the skill sets that we need in British Columbia, and we can't have this cap impacting our healthcare system or the availability of childcare or the ability to build the homes that we need. And so I think that message will be well received by the federal government. I think that our public institutions have generally done a very good job in terms of ensuring high quality education, supporting international students. There are areas, though, where we've had to step in, and Minister Robinson's announcement today about tuition predictability is an example of that. It's important that international students see consistent tuition year to year when they come to British Columbia, when they start a program, whether it's in a public or a private school. Our goal will be to support our public institutions, of course, in driving innovation, employment, and opportunities for people, and international students are part of that. They will remain our priority, but there are a number of private institutions that deliver vital skills training in British Columbia, and we'll be supporting them as well.
Justine, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thanks. And so when you're speaking with Ottawa, like, do you have some assurance that they're open to exemptions, or is this something that's in doubt right now?
Well, at the end of the day, it's federal government authority whether or not any particular visa is issued. I do think that there's a role for the province to play here in supporting the federal government's goal, which we share, of reducing the overall numbers, but doing it in a way that minimizes harm to the overall provincial economy, to post-secondary institutions, to international students themselves, and maximizes the benefits of why we've always supported a strong international student program in British Columbia. I think that we can get there together. That's been my message to them. Admittedly, they don't have to listen to us, but I do think that the program will be much stronger, the harm will be less, the benefits will be more if we work together, and frankly, I found a positive reception for that message here. I did have a conversation with Minister Miller about this exact issue this morning.
Our next question is from Nono Shen, Canadian Press.
Oh, hi, Premier. I also have a question regarding the international student announcement this morning. I'm just curious, what will the BC government do if some private institutions, they just endorse the new rules from the government? Will you try to shut them down or give them some penalties? Thank you.
Thanks, Nono. In terms of institutions in British Columbia, there are a wide array of private institutions, big and small, in our province. But regardless of the size of the institution, our expectations of the level of quality are the same. There are institutions that are not meeting our expectations right now. Mr. Robinson has shared with you some details about how her team will be addressing those issues of quality, which could include withdrawing the license for those particular institutions to operate, or recommending that the federal government not issue visas for international students that would be registering at those institutions. We're going to continue to do that quality work, and we'll partner with the federal government in terms of their responsibility here and in terms of the overall numbers of students.
No, do you have a follow-up?
Oh, yes, I do. I also wonder where the students at private colleges need to meet the same language requirements as international students at public schools. If so, when will the new rule to be implemented? Thank you.
When will the new rule be implemented?
Yes, correct. You got it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'll ask Minister Robinson's team to get back to you on the implementation date on that announcement. I don't know it offhand.
And those are all the questions we have today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much.